During the 1800s, the North and South had many differences. Just like the sibling fight, two sides of the country decided to fight in a civil war. The country's halves argued and bickered to the point where war was necessary and were also on the verge of splitting apart. Southern cities threatened to leave like, like the country, like a sibling would threaten to run away from home when something didn't go their way. The North had many more advantages over the South, such as factory production, farmland, railroad mileage, weapons, population, and experience, just like the older sibling has more power over the younger one. The South, on the other hand, acts like the younger sibling with only advantage of fighting a defensive war. They act like the younger sibling because they lacked in experience and knowledge. In the North, the geography was a lot different than the geography in the South. They had more of a variety of land. The North had fast-flowing rivers, hills, rocky land, and farmland. The South had lots of farmland, rivers, and oceans. Cities were usually built near the coastline, just like brothers and sisters have different appearances. Both sides were used for farming. Even though the North had more farmland, the South was known for farming. The climates were also very different. The North had hot summers and severe winters, as for the South had scorching hot summers and very mild winters. Slavery was one of the biggest issues that the North and the South had during the Civil War. The North didn't quite like the fact that slavery existed, although it was allowed in the Union. On the other hand, the South wanted slavery. They needed slaves to keep their farms in good condition and to get work done around their land. They picked cotton and kept the farms functioning correctly. Slaves worked through harsh and brutal conditions because the climate in the South was always hot. Slaves were forced against their will to work for absolutely no pay. This is almost like when a brother asks a sister to do his chores without pay. The punishment for a slave when trying to run away would be tortured against their will in front of others to teach them not to attempt escaping. If a slave did escape without being caught, they would most likely flee to the North, where if found, they would be sent back to the South and no longer free. After the Dred Scott case, however, slaves that managed to escape to the North would remain free in the Union. The two sides made and failed to make many compromises. During the Civil War, for example, one compromise made was called the Compromise of 1850. This compromise was a result of California becoming a free state, New Mexico and Utah open to slavery, no slave trade in Washington, D.C., and a strong Fugitive Slave Act was put into order. Another compromise was the Missouri Compromise in 1820. This ended in Maine becoming a free state, Missouri becoming a slave state, slavery banned in Louisiana Territory. The North and South made many compromises. When the compromises that they were making got one side really mad, the war got closer and closer. Secession was the last event that took place, which ended in war. During the Civil War, many battles took place. Just like siblings have fights and arguments, so did the North and South. Although theirs were much more violent, some of the major battles include the Battle of Gettysburg, Battle of Chickamauga, Battle of Chancellorsville, Battle of Wilderness, and the Battle of Spotsylvania. All of these battles mentioned had taken place around the same area. They took place near the states of Virginia, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. Most battles happened around this area because it was the center of both the Union States and the Confederate States. Many people died during these battles. Many more battles took place as well. People died because of old battle tactics. During these battles, the soldiers had to live in dirty, unpleasant conditions surrounded by the smell of death. Many people had many different points of view on the Civil War. The North and South had different views as well as the country themselves. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, had different points of view than the leader of the Confederate, Jefferson Davis. Abraham Lincoln, President of the U.S., did not like the Civil War. He wanted the United States to become one nation and to get along. The North wanted to defeat the South to get rid of slavery. Jefferson Davis, leader of the Confederate, wanted the South to defeat the North. He wanted them to leave the South alone and let them keep slavery. The South wanted to defeat the North because they wanted them off their backs so that they can keep slavery and spread it all around. After the Civil War ended, there was a lot of destruction and dead bodies everywhere. For most blacks, the Emancipation Proclamation and the end of the Civil War meant a renewal of hope and becoming equal. They wanted to have the rights that all other American citizens have. When the war ended, they were given many more privileges. These privileges included to run for office, attend school, and vote. This is like a brother and sister fight because after the fights, one may have a mark or a scratch. The other, who didn't get their way in the first place, may get the rights to do whatever it was they wanted as well. Civil War made the United States a better country today. It showed and taught us that compromises is the way to go. The Civil War brought us back together again. We reunite as one nation and are still one today. We may still have problems with each individual state, but we are making it better by making compromises. Even if we don't get everything we want, at least we get half or sometimes even more. We have one leader, our president, and we vote as a country. This is almost like when a sibling grows older and realizes that all the fighting they did as kids was worthless and senseless. There was absolutely no point in even letting a word spill out.